Welcome back to the VPL. We're officially kicking off week 1 of the second round, and today we're breaking down everything that happened in our opening matches. For this recap, the first 3 battles will be shown as fast-paced highlight summaries, and the final match will feature full commentary and a post-game analysis. If you want to watch any of the fights in their entirety, all shorter matches are linked down below. Let's get started with the first match. In our first match, we have Digiko vs Takako, a really interesting matchup between Rain Balance and bulky offense built around Articuno, Kyurem and Suicune. The early game starts with Takako setting screens and spreading status, but the trick interaction on Meowstic becomes a huge turning point. After taking Digiko's Assault Vest, Meowstic can't use any of its support moves anymore, which removes Takako's main way of controlling the pace of the match. From there, Digiko keeps very solid momentum, Pelipper repeatedly forces Slitherwing out, Arcanine absorbs pressure, slowly stacks value, and Cresselia helps stabilize the mid-game even through paralysis and chip damage. Kyurem does manage to break through Cresselia, but Terrafire Gastron answers immediately and prevents Kyurem from snowballing. In the late game, Raikou becomes the win condition. Once Arcaludon has weakened the rest of the team and picked up key traits, Raikou is free to sweep through Articuno, Kyurem and Suicune with Aura Sphere and Volt Switch. Overall, a very clean game from Digiko, great weather control, great pivoting, and a smart endgame plan. Takako had strong pressure tools, but losing Meowstic's utility so early made it hard to keep control of the tempo for her. Next up, we have I's first match with a brand new redrive team facing Shiraiko's Rain team. I immediately shows what a new roster can do with Cyclizar, which opens with Shed Tail and gets a free switch into Decidueye, which starts applying pressure right away. Spirit Shackle trapping Zapdos and Frotus becomes a recurring theme and gives I a lot of control over the early game. Zapdos takes heavy chip damage but manages to break through the substitute and eventually forces I to pivot. But Mamoswine comes in and trades huge damage with Icicle Spear. Even though Mamoswine goes down, the chip it did lets Marblestiff safely clean up Zapdos with a Terror Dark Crunch. Shaman then plays a really important mid-game role. Its natural bulk plus Leech Seed lets it stabilize the field and wear down Foragers, which struggles to make progress and eventually falls to Decidueye. From there, Decidueye becomes the standout of the match, picking up Politoed with Leaf Blade, threatening Basculegion with priority, and keeping the momentum firmly in I's favor until it finally drops to recoil. The endgame is clean. Clodsire tries to stall with Poison Jab and Black Sludge, but Leech Seed plus Marblestiff's Crunch finishes it off. Greninja comes in last, but Vikavolt uses Volt Switch and closes the game on the spot. Overall, a strong debut for I's new roster. The combination of Shed Tail support, Decidueye's trapping, and Shaman's sustain created a really controlled and well-managed match. A great start into the second round for I. Next up, we've got Nagi vs Karen, and this one has a really unexpected huge swing. Nagi opens with Alolan Ninetales into Iron Treads and immediately shows her game plan, which is Encore to lock Iron Treads into Ice Spinner and then safely set Auroraville up. From there, Ninetales starts chipping away at Karen's team and even chunks Dragapult for over half with Freeze Dry on the switch in. Once the screens are up, Nagi brings in Alomomola and Raging Bolt. Karen reveals Flame Orb Milotic with Terragras as her main Raging Bolt check, and for a while it looks really comfortable. Recover, Scald, burn damage ticking, but every turn of burn and every freeze dry from Ninetales slowly starts to matter. In the mid game, Iron Treads and Glasgow have their little mini duel. Iron Treads spams Ice Spinner, Glasgow keeps itself alive with Poison Heal, and Alomomola sits in the back with Rocky Helmet and Wish to soak hits and punish contact. Talonflame tries to break through on the physical side, but repeated scores from Alomomola keep it in check. The scariest moment for Nagi is when King Gambit finally comes in on Alomomola. Karen gets up to +4 with Sword Stance and deletes Alomomola with Cut or Cleave, but Rocky Helmet does a lot of damage to King Gambit, and that sets up the clip of the game. Sneasler comes in and just uppercuts the entire win condition with upper hand, cleanly removing a boosted Kingambit in one hit. Talonflame immediately trades it back with Brave Bird, but that exchange massively favors Nagi. From there, the endgame is all about the pivot core of Raging Bolt and low kicks. Raging Bolt keeps clicking Volt Switch into the weakened Grass Terra Melodic and Bronzong, while Terra Bug low kicks fires off boosted U-turns that knock Melodic out after all that burn chip. Bronzong can't keep up with the pressure either, and once that falls, Iron Treads is the last one standing. Gliscor comes back in one more time, shrugs off the Earthquake, survives an Ice Spinner, and finishes things with Brick Break, closing out a really controlled match for Nagi. For our final match of the week, we have Mirabel vs Riona. Mirabel is bringing a really solid balanced team built around Rotom Wash and Corviknight as a defensive core, with Meowscarada handling most of the wall breaking, and Entei and Miss Maggie is sitting in the back as a scary late game win condition. On the other side, Riona is running a very aggressive team with Kilowattrel to spam Volt Switch, Overquill to late Toxic Spikes, Primarina as a powerful special Wall Breaker, and Annihilate that can completely take over a game if it finds the right setup window. The big question in this matchup is whether Mirabel can keep hazards off the field and stay healthy long enough to enable a Miss Maggie sweep, or if Riona's chip damage and Wall Breakers will crack their defensive core first. Let's jump into the battle and see how this last match of week 1 plays out. Mirabel leads off with Munkidori and Riona leads off with Kilowattrel, which is a very offensive lead for Riona. Mirabel immediately switches into Rotom Wash. Riona predicts that switch, clicks Volt Switch, gets a crit, which does over 50% to Rotom Wash here, and Riona is able to answer Mirabel's switch, goes into Overquill, and this might be an opportunity for Overquill to set Toxic Spikes. Mirabel goes out into Corviknight to probably click Defog. Oh, and what Riona does here is she probably predicts the defog and switches into Kilowattrel, which could have competitive as an ability. We see defog, evasion goes down, and this is something very important for Mirabel to see, because since Kilowattrel didn't get a +2 special attack boost, it doesn't have the competitive ability, it has Volt Absorb as an ability. Munkidori comes out, catches a Thunderbolt, which does 66%. It's Scarfed here probably, or this is a slow Kilowattrel. However, Munkidori clicks Toxic, which is probably not the ideal move here. Thunderbolt takes down the Munkidori, and the Kilowattrel is looking pretty scary here. Riona hard switches out into Overquill again, and Mirabel can use that to heal back up with Pain Split. She switches into Corviknight, probably predicting another Toxic Spike, so we circle around the same turn as before, but this time Mirabel doesn't have her Poison type to switch into the Toxic Spikes. We see Entei coming in. Entei doesn't get poisoned by Toxic Spikes, so it's very obvious that Entei has Heavy Duty Boots as an item. And with that knowledge, the only Pokemon that's left to be affected by Toxic Spikes is Meowscarada. Riona switches into Primarina, predicting a fire move probably. And Primarina really takes the Sacred Fire well. Surf does okay damage to the probably special defensive Rotom Wash. Energy Ball does almost 40%. Will-O-Wisp burns Primarina, which it doesn't mind too much, as it's probably the special wall of the team. Avalok comes out, which is probably the physical wall of this team. This is not an ideal matchup. We have the same interaction again. No competitive on Kilowatt Roll means no special attack boost. And this is a free electric tap move for Riona here. She uses Volt Switch, almost killing Rotom Wash. And she gets out the Annihilate, maybe to get some chip. However, Will-O-Wisp is looking pretty scary for Annihilate. Drain Punch does 25% to Corviknight. However, Annihilate takes massive damage with Rocky Helmet here. Heals back up with leftovers. And unfortunately, this passive damage doesn't count towards Rage Fist's damage boost. Riona hard switches into Voltreant this time without hazards on the field, which is very risky because Voltreant doesn't want to eat a potential Brave Bird. Meowscarada comes out, resists the Thunderbolt, and Riona can now freely switch into Avalok. She switches into Cinderace. It works out because Meowscarada goes for Play Rough. However, that was super risky from Riona. Cinderace is not the type of Pokemon that you defensively want to switch in. She switches into Cinderace again into the Stomping Tantrum, and with that, Cinderace dies without having done anything. Okay, she goes back into Primarina, and now she goes for Energy Ball. However, she has to hard switch here. Maybe now she does go into Avalok, or maybe she goes into Annihilate. Okay, so Cinderace and Annihilate were her physical wall breakers, and so far she has lost one to just switching into very strong attacks without doing any damage. And since we saw Play Rough from Meowscarada before, if Mirabelle uses Play Rough again, that's probably a dead Annihilate. She does use Play Rough again, you see Protein Boost, and that's a dead Annihilate. That's not looking good for Riona, especially with Avalok in the back, which would have easily taken that Play Rough. Barbarage doesn't hit Corviknight since it's a Steel type. Liquidation doesn't do much damage as well. The recoil damage from Rocky Helmet does even more to Overquill. Brave Bird does 35%, and Overquill is not looking very healthy over here. Riona hard switches out into Kilowatt Roll, which takes the Brave Bird. It resists, but 34% HP with the added toxic damage is much. Volt Switch kills the Corviknight, and at this point, either Annihilate or Cinderace would have been able to sweep the rest of Mirabelle's team since the physical defense wall is down. Riona goes into Primarina. Mirabelle goes out into Meowscarada, which is a bad matchup for Riona. She finally switches into Avalok. We see Avalok taking 24% from the Play Rough, which is nothing. Riona uses Rapid Spin here for no apparent reason, since there are no hazards on the field. And Mirabelle goes out into Hermes Magius, which isn't affected by Rapid Spin, and this could be an opportunity for Mirabelle to set up Nasty Plot. Riona goes into Overquill. Mirabelle terrestrializes and uses Nasty Plot, and I think that's pretty much game. Shadow Ball kills Overquill, and I don't think anything on Riona's team has enough health to survive any of this. Avalok is, as I said, a physical defense wall, so it's not very bulky on the special side. Primarina is very specially bulky, but it's not able to take a +2 life orb boosted Shadow Ball from Miss Magius. Hurricane is the last straw for Riona with Kilowattrel. Hurricane misses, and here we see the last Shadow Ball killing Kilowattrel and winning Mirabel the match. That was a really clean game from Mirabel with a big focus on long-term positioning. Early on, Riona's plan looked strong, Kilowattrel kept up momentum with Volt Switch, Overquill got multiple layers of Toxic Spikes, and Primarina was threatening heavy damage whenever it came in. Mirabel had to constantly rotate through Rotom Wash and Corviknight just to stay afloat. Rotom's Pain Split kept it usable, and burning Primarina made it much less scary over time. But the key turning points were Meowscarada picking off Annihilate and anti-killing Cinderace, removing Riona's main win conditions in just 2 turns. Once Magius hit the field on Avalok and set up Nasty Plot, the entire game shifted. At +2 with Life Orb, Shadow Ball just tore through the rest of Riona's team, as we saw. Overquill could not pressure it, Avalok dropped, Primarina dropped, and Kilowattrel's Hurricane was basically Riona's final chance to stop the sweep, however it missed. And in the end, Mirabel's hazard management and patience paid off. That wraps up our Week 1 recap of Round 2. Remember, if you want to watch any of these matches in your own time, I have all the replays linked down below in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Week 2.